Welcome back inside the corner of Lock and Lansdowne, the Peterborough Memorial Center. Pete Dalladay, Scott Arnold, and it's time for the inquiry. And we never know what's coming our way, Scott, which is great because this way we don't even have to research it, which is not a bad thing sometimes. Okay, question number one. What is the most important skill for young lacrosse players to master?
Picking up the ball, I know, is a big one. When the ball's running around there, you'll see a lot of the kids behind us trying to chase that down. So as you get older, you just do the scoop. But when you're young, to trap the ball and bring it in, I think that's the toughest part. Because if you don't have the ball in your stick, well, then you can't learn to pass and catch, which are the two fundamental essentials that go beyond that. But I think how to chase down that ball, trap it, and scoop it up is, at a young age, that's the most important skill to get under your belt first.
Yeah, Zach Currier, a former Peterborough Laker, started doing that at the age of 17 months, basically. Wow. That's when he was trapping and scooping balls. I'm actually just going to say catching the ball will be the number one skill they should focus on. And once you catch it, then you can figure out how to shoot it, put it up against a wall. Wall always bounces back, so try that one as well. But I'm going to go with catching. That would be my answer.
All right.
I'm not going to disagree with yours either. They're both good. Okay. What old school technique or skill needs to be taught more? Well, I just touched on it a bit, so you go.
I think the overhand shot. There's a lot of guys, the twisters are pretty, the backhanders are pretty, all that sort of stuff, but just that classic overhand shot. One of my coaches, J.J. Johnson, one of the best players to ever pick up a lacrosse stick, anytime we would shoot sidearm or underhand, he would say, I don't want to see any of that. I want to see an overhand shot. Once you master that, then you can try all the other stuff. This is when we were really young, and he was right. Once you master that overhand shot, and I think it's a shot that a lot of kids see the backhanders, the twisters, the sidearms, and they think, I'm going to start right away doing that. But no, you have to, that classic old school skill of the overhand shot needs to be perfected before you can move into any of that stuff.
Since old school was used in the question, I'm going to go with a practice technique that I touched on in the first answer. Kids or anyone that you're taking up the game of lacrosse, go find a school. Queen Elizabeth in the north end of Peterborough is a perfect one. They have a great big round circle, maybe not during school hours, but on the weekend or at night, and just keep playing catch against that wall. And it's a great old school practice technique, and it costs nothing at all to do. So there you have it.
Wall ball.
A little wall ball. Okay, question number 3. This is the big one. Let's see what helped you the most when you were learning the game.
Having great coaches. And I mentioned J.J. Johnson, also had Jan McGee, had a whole bunch of guys growing up that, they were invested. They had kids on the team as well, but they were invested in everybody who was on that squad. And if it wasn't for great coaches all the way up, even through Junior A, guys like Jimmy Wasson and John Martin coaching me and Dan Dunn, those are guys that, they played the game. They were there. And they weren't just, not that there's anything wrong with parent volunteers. Obviously, they need to be a part of it. But Peterborough's very fortunate in the fact that at all levels, as we saw on the floor here, it's former pros, former Lakers, former players that are all giving back to the game. And I think that's what separates Peterborough and the Whitbys and the Bramptons in terms of minor lacrosse from the rest of the teams, because you're learning from the best as a kid, guys who, you look up to and people who have done it before you.
Yeah, I had an older brother. That's where I learned from. I had an uncle that, played for the Lakers in pro lacrosse, and that's how I learned. I just did what they did, and I also had the luxury of walking up to the old Knights of Columbus Bowl back in the late 70s when you could just wander off by yourself as a 6-year-old and play lacrosse at the bowl with no worries. So the combination of that and what Scott mentioned, it seemed to work. Decent enough that we're here talking about lacrosse after all these years. Third period coming up after this.